My wife loved azaleas. Every spring, she'd spend entire weekends out in the front yard, kneeling in the dirt with her gardening gloves and that old straw hat she refused to throw away. The neighbors would slow down their cars just to look at our yard. 41 years we lived in that house on Birchwood Lane. 41 years of azaleas, of screen doors slamming, of coffee at the kitchen table before the sun came up. Carol passed in February. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to gone. After the funeral, my son Nathan helped me sort through her things. He cried more than I expected. He was always closer to his mother than he let on. We sat on the edge of the bed in our room, her room, it still felt like her room, and he held my hand and said, "Dad, you shouldn't be alone in this house." I told him I was fine. I wasn't fine. But I was 67 years old, and I'd been taking care of myself for a long time before Carol, and I could do it again. That's what I told myself. He called every few days after that. His wife Melissa would get on the phone sometimes. She had that particular kind of warmth that always felt like it was working toward something, but I never said that out loud. Carol never liked her much, and I'd always thought Carol was too hard on people. I thought that until I stopped thinking it. 3 months after the funeral, Nathan brought it up again. He drove up from Charlotte on a Saturday, didn't call first, just showed up, and we sat at the kitchen table with coffee, and he said, "Dad, Melissa and I have been talking. We want you to come live with us." I looked at him over the rim of my mug. He was 40 years old. He had his mother's eyes and my stubbornness, and somewhere along the way he picked up something from Melissa that I couldn't quite name. "I'm fine here," I said. "You're alone in a 4-bedroom house, Dad. I know how many bedrooms I have. I built the addition myself in 1998. He smiled, but it didn't reach those eyes. "We have the space. Melissa already said she's happy to. I don't need to be taken care of." He let it go that day. He helped me clean out the gutters, and we ate dinner watching college football, and it felt almost normal. Almost. He came back the next weekend, and the one after that. Each time, the conversation drifted back to the same place. They had a guest room. It would be good for all of us. Melissa was already looking at how they could rearrange things. I want to be clear about something. I loved my son. I still love him. But looking back now, I can see the shape of what was happening, and I was too deep inside my grief to recognize it at the time. It was Melissa's idea, I think. She's sharp in the way that people are sharp, when they're always running the numbers in their head. Nathan isn't like that. Nathan's the kind of man who gets talked into things without realizing he's been talked into anything. I've known that about him since he was 17, and his friend convinced him to skip school for a week, and Nathan somehow thought the whole thing was his own idea. They moved in on a Thursday in May. It was supposed to be temporary. That was the word used. Temporary, while they figured out the arrangement. Nathan was between jobs. He'd left a position in sales and was consulting, which is a word that sometimes means working and sometimes means waiting for work. Melissa worked remotely, something in marketing, though I could never get a straight answer about what exactly she did or who she did it for. The house changed fast. First it was small things. Melissa rearranged the kitchen, put my coffee mugs in a different cabinet, moved Carol's cookbooks to a box in the garage. She said she was just organizing. I found Carol's cast iron skillet on a shelf I couldn't reach without a step stool. I didn't say anything. I should have said something. Then Nathan suggested we look into consolidating the household accounts. He said it would be easier, more efficient, if they had access to help manage the bills while I was getting back on my feet. I wasn't aware my feet were anything other than on the ground, but I nodded along. "He's my son. I want you to understand that I'm not a naive man. I spent 30 years as a civil engineer. I've read contracts. I know what words like consolidating and access mean when they're used casually in conversation. But grief does something to you that I wasn't prepared for. It doesn't make you stupid. It makes you tired. It makes you willing to hand things over, just so you don't have to hold them for a while." I gave Nathan access to my checking account, just the checking account, so he could help with the utilities, he said. It seemed reasonable. What I didn't notice for a while was that he was studying the rest of it. The retirement accounts, the savings, the house. It was paid off. Carol and I finished the mortgage in 2019, and we celebrated with a bottle of champagne we'd been saving since our 25th anniversary. The house was worth somewhere around $420,000, based on what similar properties had sold for on our street. It was the largest asset I had. It was also the place where Carol planted those azaleas. I found out what they were planning by accident. It was a Wednesday evening. I'd come downstairs for a glass of water, and the kitchen light was on. The door to the back porch was cracked, and I could hear them out there. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I stood at the sink, and the voices came through the screen, and I heard Melissa say, "If his name isn't on it, it doesn't matter what he says later." I stood very still. Nathan said something I couldn't make out. Melissa said, "A quitclaim deed is easy. People do it all the time for estate planning. He won't even question it if we frame it right." Nathan said, "He's not going to. He will if you explain it's about protecting the house from probate." That's true, by the way. It's not a lie. We're just not going to tell him the other part. The other part? I went back upstairs with my glass of water, and I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a long time. I didn't sleep. I kept hearing Carol's voice in my head, that practical, no-nonsense voice she had. "Don't wait. Find out what you're dealing with." So I did. I have a friend named George who's been a real estate attorney for 30 years. We went to Purdue together. I called him the next morning from my car, parked 2 blocks away, because I didn't trust the walls of my own house anymore, and that was a feeling I never thought I'd have. I told George what I'd heard. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "A quitclaim deed would transfer ownership. If you sign one, the house isn't yours anymore. Period. They haven't asked me to sign anything yet, but they're planning to." Sounds like it. He told me to come in. I drove to his office that afternoon, and we talked for 2 hours. George walked me through everything. What a quitclaim deed does, what it doesn't do, and more importantly, what I should do instead. He'd been telling me for years I should set up a living trust, and I'd always put it off because it seemed complicated, and I didn't like thinking about what comes after. I wasn't putting it off anymore. A living trust is different from a will. It doesn't go through probate. It transfers immediately upon death to whoever you designate. More importantly, and this is the part George wanted me to understand, once the house is in the trust, I'm still the trustee. I still control it completely while I'm alive. But a quitclaim deed, signed under pressure, or signed without fully understanding what you're agreeing to, can strip that away entirely. We set up the trust over the next 2 weeks. I came in after Nathan left for his consulting calls in the morning. I told no one. I signed the paperwork transferring the house into the trust on a Tuesday morning in George's conference room with his paralegal as witness. No lawyer's office at midnight, no drama. Just a Tuesday morning and 2 cups of coffee, and my signature on a document that meant my home was protected. Then I came home and waited. It took another 10 days. Nathan sat me down at the kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon. Melissa was there too, which I noticed, and he started talking about estate planning. He said he'd been doing research. He said a quitclaim deed would be the simplest way to make sure the house stayed in the family and didn't get tied up in courts after I was gone. He slid a piece of paper across the table toward me. I looked at it. I looked at him. I looked at Melissa, who was watching me with that smile she uses when she thinks she's about to get what she wants. I picked up the paper. "This would transfer the house to you," I said. "It keeps it in the family, Dad. That's all." "To you, not to me. To you. It's just a formality, Nathan." I set the paper down. "I want you to listen to me very carefully." He stopped. "The house is already in a living trust, has been for 2 weeks. George Whitfield drew it up. The trust protects the house from probate, keeps it in my control while I'm alive, and transfers to your name, and only your name, not jointly, when I pass, after an independent trustee reviews the circumstances of my death." I paused. I added that last part. The colour left his face. Melissa made a sound I can't really describe. Something between a word and an exhale. "Dad, We weren't trying to. I heard you on the porch, I said. 3 weeks ago. Wednesday night, I came down for water. He didn't say anything. There it was, hanging between us like smoke. I told them they had 30 days to make other arrangements. That was more than fair. I offered to help Nathan find leads on the job search, which is the kind of thing you do when you're a parent, even when your heart is broken. Melissa didn't speak for the rest of that conversation. She picked up her coffee mug and went upstairs, and that was that. They left in 3 weeks. Nathan called me from the driveway with the moving truck behind him. He said, "I'm sorry, Dad." Those were the only words he said. I don't know if he meant them. I don't know if it matters whether I know. I go out and water Carol's azaleas every few evenings now, when the weather's good. They came back this spring, same as always. Azaleas are tougher than they look. So apparently, am I. I'm not telling you this story so you'll be angry at my son. I'm not even angry at my son most days. I'm telling you this because I spent 30 years as an engineer, and I know that structures fail when they're not maintained. Marriages, bridges, trust funds, relationships, they all need attention. I let things slide after Carol passed because I was in pain, and someone used that pain as a doorway. Don't let anyone use your pain as a doorway. If you're in this situation, or if you think you might be heading toward it, call a real estate attorney. Not a family friend, not someone your son recommends, someone you found yourself. Ask about a revocable living trust. Ask what a quitclaim deed actually does before you sign one. These are not complicated questions. The answers are not complicated either. The complicated part is admitting you need to ask them. I still talk to Nathan. He called last month and we spoke for about 15 minutes. It was polite and careful, the way conversations are when both people are trying not to break something that's already cracked. Maybe it'll get easier. Maybe it won't. I have no control over that. What I have control over is that house on Birchwood Lane. The one with the azaleas out front. The one Carol loved. That part I got right. There's something nobody tells you about betrayal when it comes from inside your own family. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like a slow leak, quiet, patient, almost invisible until the damage is already done. That's what I kept thinking about after Nathan and Melissa drove away with that moving truck. Not anger, not satisfaction. Just that image of a slow leak and how long I'd let it go without looking at the pipes. I'm not a man who believes the universe hands out punishments on a schedule. I'd lived long enough to know that bad things happen to decent people and some dishonest people die comfortable. But I do believe in something simpler than fate, that the choices we make build the life we end up standing in. Nathan made choices. Melissa made choices. I made choices too, including the choice to sit in my grief and hand over more than I should have, and the choice, eventually, to stop doing that. What I've come to understand is that wisdom isn't something you arrive at. It's something you practice, badly and imperfectly, for as long as you're breathing. I spent 30 years as an engineer and I still almost lost my home because I confused love with trust and trust with proof. Those are three different things. Love is what you feel. Trust is what you extend. Proof is what you verify. I skipped the last step and I nearly paid for it with everything Carol and I built together. The integrity part. And I mean integrity in the old sense, the structural sense, like a bridge that holds, that's not about being hard or suspicious. It's about knowing what you're responsible for and refusing to abandon it, even when abandoning it would be easier. My house was my responsibility. My financial future was my responsibility. My son's choices were not something I could control, but my response to them was, the morning I called George from my car 2 blocks away. That was integrity, not dramatic, not heroic. Just a man deciding he wasn't going to let his pain make his decisions for him anymore. And the resilience, that came from Carol, honestly. She grew azaleas in clay soil that every gardening book said was wrong for azaleas. She just amended the soil herself and tried again the next season. That's the whole lesson right there if you want one. You amend what you can, you protect what matters. You don't let one bad season convince you the garden is finished. If there's anything I want you to take from what I've shared, it's this. The most important documents you will ever sign are the ones that protect you before anything goes wrong, not after. Before. A living trust, a conversation with an attorney you found yourself, a clear understanding of what you own and what happens to it. These aren't morbid things to think about. They're the most loving things you can do for yourself and for the people who genuinely have your best interests at heart. Do it while you're clear-headed. Do it while it's Tuesday morning and the coffee's still warm and nothing is on fire yet. Nathan still has his mother's eyes. That's not going to change. Neither is what he did. I hold both of those things at the same time, and I've stopped waiting for it to stop being complicated. The azaleas came back this spring. Same as always,